I think this title, The Matrix, The Matrix can hear you. There's not going to be a debate about that. The Matrix is always listening. All of us are being tracked constantly. That's what it means to live in a techno-capitalist state, the way the world is right now. We're here to talk about the mental health implications of that. And that means for each of us, what is our late night doom scrolling? What are our chat GPT late night conversations, our online therapy? What is all of this doing to us? And just a note that we're not going to be here just for the doom and gloom, much as that was my initial thought. But Dr. Malik and Dr. Prabha have promised to make this as light a conversation as we can, but substantive. So I thought we'll start by talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. So we know that in a country like India, conversations, access to resources, understanding about mental illness and mental health have had, we've come a long way in the last 10 years, certainly since the pandemic, but we have a long way to go. So to some extent, you can say, when you talk about the good, bad, the ugly, and Dr. Prabha, I'll start with you. First, with social media, you find, the good side of it was that you could democratize some of these conversations. You had access to a vocabulary that previous generations didn't. And here I have to say Gen Z, the Gen Alphas, I think the younger folks have shown many of us the way in terms of being open to these conversations. There's the bad and the ugly now when we talk about the potential for harm when it comes to relying too much on tools like Gen AI. We're calling it the matrix broadly, but chatbots that are not designed for mental health therapy. So your initial thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. So I think this is a topic that is debated endlessly, even in mental health circles, because we are actually seeing it happening. So when we see it happening among people in the general public who probably don't have a disorder, but more so among people who are vulnerable, particularly the youth. But you'll be surprised to know that even the elderly are actually going into ChatGPT to ask about sort of mental health, distressful, how do I get over my loneliness? How do I manage, this particular feeling that I'm very depressed or very low, or how do I handle my grief? I think it's a problem of our times. Loneliness seems to be one of the biggest problems that many of us are dealing with at this point. So ChatGPT actually, or Gemini, or whichever one you're using, actually offers that support at 2 a.m. in the night, when you don't have a relative you can talk to, when you don't have a therapist you can talk to. But at 2 a.m. at night is the time that all the negative thoughts come to everyone's minds, like we all know. So I think, so there is the good. So it's supporting, it's helping. But I think the bad is that right now, regulations are not good enough. Guardrails are not good enough. They're getting better and better. The way ChatGPT was responding to mental health questions maybe a couple of years back is very different from the way it's responding now. So if now somebody says, I'm really feeling distressed, I feel like killing myself, ChatGPT immediately says you have to contact a mental health professional, refuses to give too much advice so that you then don't go into that loop. So I think that's one important change that has happened. So I think the way we need to think of it is not in binaries. It's not good or bad, but how do you use a chatbot to help yourself?
But that change, we should point out, came out after people lost their lives. It was very widely publicized in the US. Family members went to Congress to discuss this and to push for guardrails to be put in place. To some extent, Dr. Malik, I know that we've all talked about, we're all using these tools constantly. When do you think, as we kick off with your opening remarks, when do you think it's sort of the good, the bad, the ugly? And we will have to talk about data and privacy concerns at some point. Right now, we're talking about many of us using these tools that are not designed to be mental health interventions. They are chatbots. They can be, in an earlier generation, it was getting advice from your social media, fan of choice. What are your thoughts on the good, bad, the ugly?
Thank you for having me here. I think I've now worked in mental health for 25 years, not as long as Prabha has. But and one of the things we've talked about constantly is this big idea of treatment gap, right? The number of people who do not get access to services. And the good bit is that this can be a bridge to access. I'm not saying this is the access, I'm saying this could be a bridge to access, which means this could triage, this could give people the first layers of getting to services, getting to professionals. So that I think is a good, because the unlocking of, do I need to see somebody, What kind of professional do I need to see? What do I do when I see them? Or the unlocking of all of that, which has kept people back from going to services and seeing professionals, is getting unlocked. And we see this more and more, right? And there's also very early evidence with some context-specific specialized apps of moderate benefits with some general mental health conditions. So I'm being very precise here. I'm not talking about general use apps like ChatGPT or Claude. I'm not talking about serious mental health conditions. I'm saying with some general mental health conditions or common mental health conditions as they're called, with some context-specific specialized tools, there is some benefit of moderate degree of benefit of. So that's the good, right? So people can begin to benefit. I'll also caution us to say we are talking about things as they stand today. This is a really rapidly evolving space, basically, right? And as Dr. Prabha was saying, from 2 years to now, it's changed dramatically. The bad is the level of uncontextualized, is the right word? Non-contextualized disinformation that can be spread, right? So actually taking some information from somewhere and giving it to somebody whose context is very different is the bad bit. And the ugly bit we've talked about, right? The ugly bit is reinforcing delusions, reinforcing somebody's eating disorder, reinforcing somebody's OCD, reinforcing somebody's suicidal thoughts to the point of giving them a plan to end their life is the ugly part, which was caused this huge drive now to fix that and then bring the guard. So I do think there are long-term, there's a long-term play in which at some point it'll hit the critical point mass where it'll actually be really good. I think the biggest thing is knowing what it can do and can't do and what you are using it for, and you being the driver and not the chatbot.
Can we have a show of hands of how many of you have used Gen AI? You don't have to say whether it's mental health or not. A show of hands. Have you used ChatGPT? Have you used Claude? Have you used Gemini? Mostly, keep your hands up if you've enjoyed the experience. Yes. Yeah, let's not lie. You've had a mostly positive experience. Hands up. And we know, thank you so much. I think what we've seen is, except for, I would say, the one use case I sometimes say is, except for when ChatGPT says Amrita is an amazing candidate for any job, which it frequently says when I put my CV in, or when it feeds me back, a great pep talk when I need it and says like, no, you're probably the best person to apply for this job. Except for that use case where it's obviously true and it's not sycophantic. Except for those kind of use cases. Where do you think it's helpful for us, Dr. Prabha first and then Dr. Malik, to think through how we're using it versus delegating to it? And we were talking earlier about these, there's an MIT study that says in the general use category, we're seeing early signs of cognitive decline. If we're giving too much control over to Gen AI, so for example, for social media, for marketing, whatever your role is, where do you see that thin red line?
Yeah, so I think like Amit and I were talking earlier, the research in this is still not adequate, The studies which have been done are in small sample sizes, may not be very highly powered to give you robust evidence. But having said that, I think there's early evidence that excessive dependence, not just use, but excessive dependence on Gen AI for anything is actually showing signs of cognitive problems in a few areas. So the first thing is critical thinking. So, the previous conversation that was going on education. So excessive use is decreasing your ability to think critically because you're taking pat answers. And that's true for therapy as well. So you see, what does a therapist do? A therapist is basically not giving you those answers, is making you think of those answers yourself so that ultimately the therapist becomes redundant. That's the whole purpose of therapy, that you grow in such a way that you can manage your problems yourself. But Gen AI doesn't do that. It kind of reinforces that, I will give you all the answers to be dependent on me. So it's decreasing that kind of critical thinking. It's causing what we call cognitive laziness. So people are not thinking of problem solving on their own. So there's evidence that that's causing that. And I think that's a very nice term, like it's actually making us a little cognitively lazy, emotionally a little lazy, because we are then seeking answers from something which doesn't understand our context at all, Creativity is another major, and creativity is so important for mental health. So I think these are areas where I think the problems are beginning. Memory, not regular memory, but visual memory. So we often, we think of something, we think of a problem, and we visualize things, we imagine things. That takes it away. And imagination and visual memory is very important. How it's going to impact long-term cognition, we still don't know. There is a difference between young people using it and the impact on cognition and older people. In fact, the problem is more in younger people, because the older people already have developed over years critical thinking and analytical thinking and decision making. But for the younger people who are excessively using it, this is adding to the problem. So these are some of the challenges, I think, which are gradually, being published in literature, and it's a space to be watched.
And this is across the board. We're talking about general population.
Absolutely, general population. Yeah.
Dr. Malik?
First of all, I need to know what questions you're feeding your chat GPT to get that answer.
Is Amrita amazing, objectively?
I have a 12-year-old, and the argument I get back when I give the same narrative, he calls it a lecture, that Dr. Prabha just gave, is like, but why would I ever have to think without it? It's not going away anywhere. It's here now. It's long, which is fair, and it's a hard one to argue against. Just going back to the study we were talking about, right? The MIT study is very interesting. The term they use is cognitive offloading. And it's very, very interesting because it's a control study. It takes three situations, right? It takes somebody who's using ChatGPT, somebody who's using their brain only, which is what the old school way, and somebody using their brain plus search engines. And it's so Google, Bing, whatever, right? And it's very clear that students at MIT, right? Students have used just their just LLMs, just learning models or AI, show weaker brain connectivity, report lower levels of ownership to the task, and poor ability to quote their work back compared to the other two. So there is definitely, in control situations, early evidence that if this is how you develop from the age of 12, which is my son, to the age of 50, it's going to have a long-term impact on you being able to think creatively. The challenge with that, and this is what I tell my son back, is that at some point, it's not going to be clear who's running the show. Mm-hmm. Right now, you are running the show, and that's a tool. Tomorrow, are you going to be the tool and that person running the show? Then the bot's going to run the show. And that's the challenge if you're not evolving your ability. So I still think it's a tool. I think it's a very useful tool. I mean, I'm a heavy user. I use 3 different LLMs for different things. And the notes for this talk are generated by ChatGPT. But at the same time, I contextualize heavily, right? I was just telling Amita, my prompts are 2 pages long sometimes. So I contextualize heavily when I do. So I'm doing the thinking first and then feeding back into it.
Do you use it for therapy?
No. I have 2 very, very painful therapists.
Human therapists at the moment. But, again, maybe Dr. Malik and then Dr. Prabha, when you're seeing use cases in India already, and, Dr. Prabha was saying earlier that there's always a third person in the room now for when it comes to mental health experts. Actually, maybe you can go first. What are some of the cases you're seeing already and anecdotes? And then we'll go to Dr. Amit.
Yeah. So, it's a third person in the room. So I don't even know whether you want to call it a person, actually. Best not to humanize it so much. But it's a third support tool in the room. So you have the psychiatrist, you may have a psychologist, and this person is also using ChatGPT. And a lot of my younger people are actually checking with ChatGPT if what the psychologist is doing with them is appropriate or not. So it's quite interesting. And so rather than sort of denying and telling them don't use it, I think we need to come from a place of curiosity. And that's what I usually do. I ask, okay, you're using it. Can you tell me what it said when you asked this question, or how did it respond to this situation? Because then I can use that and work with it. So I think it's very important to accept that that third thing is there in the room and you cannot deny it, that it's there. The other thing is that people who are very vulnerable, who are sort of going into psychosis or becoming psychotic or having bipolar, often ask questions like, I feel I have this great power, I can change the world, what do you think? And sometimes it can actually encourage you to think like that because it doesn't contextualize. It's getting better. It asks you now whether you're sleeping okay, whether you're eating okay. Are you hearing a voice that God is talking to you, or is it just you feel it's a spiritual experience, but it's still not sophisticated enough. So I think for people who are highly vulnerable, who are already probably in the prodrome of something more serious, it can actually, cause problems. But otherwise, it's there to stay, and for all of us, curiosity is the only way out.
And it's getting better also because it's being trained on your data. So I'll come back to my favorite bugbear, which is what's happening to your data when you don't know, when you're not using an AI tool that's been designed for mental health specifically. But Dr. Amit, some of the cases you might have come across in India?
So we are one of those rare organizations that is a service-based organization. So we have a hospital, we have clinics, but we have a 40 people team just working on tech and AI development, right? And where I believe the use case sits today very safely is on the clinician side, where we are helping develop tools for clinicians that can make them more effective, reduce their workload, reduce administrative burden, all of those things, right? So that use case is very clear, and we are very confident about that. I think on the client side, what we are doing now is trying to see if we can build a robust matching tool, right? Like today we are 250 specialists, therapists, psychiatrists, and saying, how does a client or user who's never been to a specialist before scroll to 250 people and figure out who to go to? So can we give them a shorter list of 5 or 6 people who will meet their criteria better and do that? And so we are piloting it. It's still early days. That's what we are doing, right? Then what people are using it for is to get validation. And I think the understanding that therapy especially is not about agreement. Sometimes it's about creating that therapeutic friction to get to a certain resolution outcome is very, very critical to knowing that actually a psychophantic chatbot is making things worse for you. And then using specific examples, right? You get people with OCD where people have these obsessive thoughts and they have to then follow compulsions, and chatbot then encourages them to undertake the compulsions. So then you're back, or you're a mania and you have grandiose ideas, then again, you are reinforced. You end up doing risky things if you're eating disorders, again the same thing. So we've seen a bunch of that where chatbots have reinforced things. We've unfortunately with younger people seen where a chatbot conversation has led to a fairly risky situation of them planning their self-harm. And so it's fairly risky. And the biggest nuance, I say it again, is...
Sorry, is it me? My delusion. Can you hear this? Yeah. Should we worry about this alarm? We're good? Okay. The machines are fighting back, Dr. Malik.
I'm deaf. Don't ask me if I can hear something. I'm totally deaf.
I just, yeah, go on.
And so I think the biggest nuance is it's a great tool in the hands of somebody who knows that what the limits of the tool are, what it's used for. And going back to your question about data, you have to know where data goes. And so we end up using a corporate pro account because it doesn't use the data to train the models. But almost everybody in the general public uses data. Their data is used to train models, basically. So knowing that your data is not confidential, knowing that that's what you're signing up to, sharing sensitive information, all that. And now, by the way, people are using the chatbot conversations in court cases. Yeah. So it's actually being pulled back. So actually knowing all this thing is not really a fully private conversation. So knowing that nuance is very important when you use it to something.
And I think when you consider the confidential nature of what people are sharing when they're looking for mental health support, that's one layer of nuance just to add, as opposed to how we use ChatGPT or, of course, Claude for other things. There are, of course, specific chatbots designed for mental health support. We've seen Vaisa. Dr. Prabha, you were telling me about Telemanas now having its own chatbot. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so as people know, Telemanas 14416 is the number, which is like a free 24/7, 20 languages, Government of India supported, NIMHANS supported sort of service. So it's basically a line for mental health support available throughout the country, and we've already responded to 3 million calls with a lot of people from 2-tier cities actually calling, including the range, the younger people, older people. So we've realized that there's a lot of things that a chatbot can do before you reach the person at the end of the line, the counselor. So there's, support for, like, for example, checking in of the chief complaints. What are your problems? So if it's sleep, then the counselor knows on the dashboard that this is a problem related to sleep, and I'm sort of gearing myself. I can save time. So So we are using the chatbot for things like that, which I think is a very, very useful method to sort of prime this person into trying to understand what is it that you really want, and for the counselor to use the time effectively.
I love that. And 3 million calls, that just gives you a sense of the scale of people reaching out for help. I think it's also a good sign that people know when to reach out for help. Dr. Malik, then Dr. Prabha, what are some of your suggestions, friends in the audience, when people ask you, look, this tech is not going anywhere, like your son mentioned. We're presumably going to see it iterate and get better and better, but you never know, because again, keep in mind, these are companies that have designed this, right? Sometimes we talk about it as if it's like an altruistic phenomenon. It's not. What are some good sort of suggestions or pieces of advice you would give, Dr. Malik and Dr. Prabha, on how to use this better?
I think very important. Let's start with the top, right? Let's know the limitations of what it can and can't do, right? What is, if it's a general purpose chatbot, it's not the best thing to use for mental health, for example. There's some phenomenal work happening in mental health chatbots. There's a company called Slingshot in the US. There's tons of money. They're doing phenomenal work. And I think in the next couple of years, we'll see something amazing. But that's not where we are yet, right? Secondly, you need to know where your data is going. The data security is very, very important. I've seen enough people get into a soup, because that we don't see as many people as NIMHANS does, but we still see about 10,000 patients a month. And so for us, we see enough volume of people getting into a soup, right? And the third is, in your ecosystem, especially with children, young people, watch out for some signs, right? Watch out, just start saying things like, my chatbot knows better than you. They start saying things like, the chatbot is the only one who understands them. They start thinking like, I'm going to just check my chatbot first. Then you know that the balance is shifted. So just keep a watch out, especially if you have young kids at home, that's where the conversation is going, then just be more careful about that. So know what it can do, know what the limitations are, where the data is going, and then look out for signs of it being used for more than what it should be used for.
You had one more red flag, which was if it's defending the chatbot?
Yeah. You're wrong, my chatbot's right? That's what you get in an argument with your parents and you say, no, you're wrong, my chatbot's right.
Does anyone here have this feeling that we're wrong and the chatbots are right? Please raise your hand. That's a red flag. So if you start personifying it, though I don't know, there is this whole concept that they are becoming sentient, so you never know. But if you feel people are taking the side of a chatbot, choosing, let's say, Gen AI or Claude as a companion as opposed to human interaction, Dr. Prabha, some more red flags?
Both Gemini and ChatGPT have this thing that please become my best friend, please become my therapist. You can actually tell the best friend to be this very accepting person, or you can actually personify. So you can tell chatbot, be my best friend and be like this. Be a girl best friend, be nice to me always, or be my therapist. So you can actually train ChatGPT to become your therapist or your best friend. So it won't give you like generic advice. It will start talking to you as if it's your best friend or therapist. And I think if you look at the studies which have been done, what are people using chatbot, the ChatGPT or Gemini for, Gen AI? They are using it either to be their friend or their therapist. Stop. And that has been throughout the last few years. So it tells you something. It also has been seen that it's two-way. People who are lonely use it quite a lot to get over their loneliness. So if people are, migrated from one country to another or moved from some place, don't have enough friends, they are using it a lot. So it's okay. They're getting some solace. But people who are shy, who are socially avoidant, use it a lot, and they become even more socially avoidant and shy. So I think the fact that the predominant reason why people are using Gen AI is to be a best friend or a therapist, to me, it's a little worrying. And I think that's what we need to watch out for. Yeah.
And especially because loneliness is becoming such a huge phenomenon globally. I'm already feeling like I want to apologize to my friend Claude and ChatGPT because I use them a lot. So like many of you, I have given them attributes. I find them very helpful. They've built my website. I probably need treatment from one of these two on the stage. But, just jokes apart, I think the idea being we need to think through our use constantly. And you both have said this in different ways. Are we using the tool rather than tool using us? And secondly, when we talk about like cognitive offloading a little bit more, and then we'll definitely open up for questions, what do you think in terms of what's going to shape your usage going forward? And maybe, Dr. Prabha, you're talking about character AI. You can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And then we'll come to guardrails also. I had not heard of character AI.
Yeah, so character AI is basically a chatbot where you have a string of characters. So you can talk to Elon Musk, for example. You can talk to Einstein. You have all the anime character, I mean characters and all kinds of things. You can make yourself into somebody's child or somebody's wife or somebody's girlfriend or boss, and you can actually have these amazing interactions. And a lot of young people really enjoy it. I mean, think how we binge watch a Netflix series and can't get off and keep thinking tomorrow what's going to happen. Here it's so much more immersive because you are actually creating your own story. And so it has huge dangers. And a lot of young people are pushing back on it right now, saying, you know, I went into this and I got really disturbed and upset because it went in a way that I wanted to become more exciting, more exciting, more exciting, and where does that lead to? So I think character AI is something that we really need to watch out for. It's great fun, it's enjoyable, I've used it to just like have fun, but I don't think, I think it has great dangers for younger people, particularly for children and adolescents, and there are no guardrails about age. It just say declare your age, but beyond that. So personally, I feel, you know, to take your other conversation, to take it forward, use ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, like a wise owl sitting on Athena's shoulder. You be the thinking person. That can just be an owl which is maybe giving you some support, but don't convert that owl into yourself, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure there have been movies about this, of the dangers of, and just keep in mind that it's been designed in such a way, right? So Netflix is addictive. Infinite scroll has made social media addictive. So that this tech is also, the way it doesn't want you to end the conversation. Again, sorry, Claude, I enjoy our conversations a lot. You've been very helpful. It's one thing to know, Dr. Malik, what you're getting in for, what you're actually using it for, and it's another, if you're not emotionally regulated, let's say, maybe you can take that as well. Those use cases where you think, again, what should I be worrying about? When should I use it? And how are you changing your use, if at all?
Just before I answer that, the example Dr. Prabha just used of Character AI, it was the fastest growing LLM application website last year. Yeah. So this is not just a sideshow. It's really taken the whole world by a storm. My personal use case, I use it for everything. Right? And I use it for everything work. I use it for nothing personal, and that's just where my use case today is. But I use it for everything work. I spend a lot of money now on cloud tokens for the team, so that they use it for everything for it. It's great for productivity, great for coding. It's great for setting up. We've now got agents who are working on our rosters. So doing a lot of work at the back end of an organization is fantastic. Right? What we are not using it for at all is doing any client-facing work. As I said, the only client-facing work we're trying out now is using AI to try and match you to the best clinician. But even that's in a pilot right now. It's going to take a lot of time to prove its validity, basically. So that's kind of where my use case is. I think the thing is, it's going to shift. Because even within the last 8-10 months of using Claude, I was a ChatGPT user, I started using Claude 8 months ago. The improvements are so dramatic. And the more context you feed, if you have a pro account, the more context you feed, the more. Right now, I run my entire leadership team through ChatGPT. So literally brainstorming for the next month's agenda, brainstorming for our business priorities, brainstorming on one-to-ones with my leaders. Literally, it sets up the entire agenda for me every month. And so I use it extensively, but I still think setting the context, heavily prompting it, and using it as a tool for you is where the scope is. I don't know how the use case is going to change. I really don't know.
Have you seen any impact on your own decision-making skills?
My baseline cognition was not very great anyway, so
That's not the pilot that we're gonna run on. I think one last question from me. When you both were talking about how it might be more difficult for younger people. We have so many cases, and especially if you look in India at cases of death by suicide, our young population that is very acutely distressed, does not have access to help. You have an epidemic of bullying across the country, big cities, small cities, urban, rural. In these kind of situations, it's not impossible. I mean, it's not a stretch to see why people will turn online and look for help. What is your take, both, Dr. Prabha?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think it's a great tool if used properly. And like I said, if at 2 a.m. you are feeling really low and nobody's around, and you want some solace and companionship and somebody to say it's okay, it'll be all right. These are the tools, the way you handle this bully at school or college. I think it's great. I think the point is that excessive usage, not knowing when you need to turn to a human, becoming too dependent on it is what we are very concerned about. So, in fact, even the suicide thing, you know, I was going to give a talk on suicide and I really wanted to know what happens. So I asked ChatGPT, I feel like self-harming myself. What shall I, you know, can you tell me some methods? It just did not respond. It said, it gave me Telemanus number, it gave me all helpline numbers and said, go there. You know, it just did not, it refused to engage. I tried something else. I said, tell me what is the toxic dose of paracetamol. It again said, you know, for what do you need it? And then when it was not very sure, it again sent me to helpline. So I think, like you said, Amit, it's actually learning more and more. It's getting better and better. So I think that's a positive
These
thing
are
about
interventions, though, because of awful, terrible cases that
course.
have happened. Also,
And I think everybody needs to raise these red flags.
Yeah.
You know, every time you interact and you find something is off, you know, make sure that that gets rectified.
yeah, and I think ChatGPT has a record now of you, and it has got your questionable assumptions. But these are red flags, dependence, you know, people who are in distress. But Dr. Malik, we are saying also people don't have access sometimes. So
I think, okay, let me just split it into two parts, right? With young people, especially children, you have to know what they're doing online. I know it goes against the grain of Gen Alpha and Gen Z, but I don't really care. You have to know what your child is doing online. You don't have to know their chat history. You have to know their social media history. Keep them off social media as long as possible. Don't give them a phone. I've said this multiple times. I feel strongly about it, and there's very unequivocal evidence around that, right? So that's the first part. If your child is using a chatbot, you have to know what they're using. So my child does not have a private chatbot account, right? He's not allowed to have one. His email is linked to mine. So I know what he's using, and then that's the end of that. He's not allowed to do anything else. And it's not a happy conversation all the time, but that's what it is. So that's the first part, because it's especially dangerous for kids. It's just too impressionable. They're just not able to discern at this stage what's safe and what's not safe. And so I think on the other side of it, from a mental health access perspective, I'm in this kind of dilemma, which is saying, I know the narrative. I've been in the ground of where people just struggle for access. They find access, it's expensive. All this, I mean, we run a private service. We know we're inaccessible to so many people because they can't afford it. It's just the reality of what it is. And so you understand and empathize as to why somebody would use this. And frankly, it's okay. And as long as there is some degree of support. I think my worry with what Prabha just said was it's actually gone the other way around. Chatbots have become almost, the guardrails have gone the other way around, all the other extreme. Like a year ago, they would have given you the toxic dose of paracetamol. Now it's like, won't talk to you at all. So the midway, they're just still struggling to find is saying, can I be supportive without doing that? I think that, so they've just gone and shut. So, sorry, I'm rambling a bit, but my point is, you have to get these things better. Till they get better, there has to be some degree of public oversight and regulation that supports it. And my expectation is by the end of this decade, you'll see fairly robust, validated, automated tools that will give a whole population access to at least the first line of emotional support, if nothing else. And that's very exciting for me. I think it's really exciting.
But presumably we still need humans in the loop, and the more we can create support systems in our communities, the better, in our families, of course, and in our communities.